He came to the UK at the age of 7. He spoke no English and had a fear of speaking in public. Today, amongst a host of many other achievements, he is a Toastmaster Advanced Speaker Gold and has been a member of the Early Birds Club for over 12 years. He will be sharing his personal journey through the fear of public speaking and how finding his voice has led to his current successes as a TV, radio, and clubhouse commentator. You will see the crossover between him as a public speaker and his work as an author, publisher, and audiobook narrator. And hopefully, you will be inspired to make this crossover too. With a speech entitled The Ultimate Speaker, please welcome Dele Ogun.
Toastmasters, friends, and guests. This is my journey of how I was lifted from the shadows of the fear of public speaking, to the position where now I stand, or indeed sit before you as the undercard act on this major conference, District 91 conference. It started in Nigeria. I was born in Lagos. I was born speaking my own language, the Yoruba language. I rather suspect that I did not have the fear of public speaking at that point. I rather suspect that it started when instructions were sent by my father from London that I should be put on a plane, a BOAC flight to London, on a date now forgotten in November 1969. I flew here unaccompanied. I was not just flying from one location to another. I was flying out of one culture into another culture, and principally from one language, the Yoruba language, into the English language. I recall when I arrived at primary school, the fun started with my name. You all know me as Dele Ogun. Sounds easily pronounceable. But my real name, full name, is Akindele Oguntimoju. Now you can imagine what the young English boys and girls made of that when this 7-year-old arrived at Drayton Park Primary School, Highbury, Islington. I think that's where the terror began. It manifested in the English classes. Do you remember back in primary school when it was reading time and everybody will be given a passage from that story to read? What I found was that the nerves that took over whenever I felt that my name was about to be called to read that section was such that I was a laughingstock of the class. And I found that from week to week, the section that I was given to read mercifully became shorter and shorter and shorter until it got to the point it was just the end. The teacher was being merciful. She knew that I had a problem. Let's roll forward to secondary school, Highbury Grove Boys Comprehensive School. 1,400 boys, divided into 6 houses, of which Bedford House, my house, was one of the 6. Now, our housemaster did me a great honor. He'd made me house captain, effectively head boy. But I lost sight of the fact that with the honor and the glory came the responsibility to deliver a speech to the whole school, 1,400 boys, and the tutors, and the rest of the general staff, thrown in at the deep end, this fellow who had this terror of public speaking. Now, I prepared the speech, I always prepare diligently. I'd written this excellent speech about the future of work and how computers were going to change everything about the way we worked. The microphone was there. The lectern was there. And I read, at least I thought I was reading that speech. But you know what? No one could hear it. My throat constricted, my tongue was dry, my legs were shaking. I could not get the words out. It was a complete humiliation. But it was that grand humiliation before 1,400 of my peers that set me thinking about this problem of public speaking. That accounts for the special interest that I take in those who speak well. Because I used to sit there and marvel at them and say, how do they do that? How do they do it? We then move forward. In a Nigerian household, there are only a number of occupations that one can follow in those days. You're either a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer. I was useless at science and maths, so by default, it was only law that was the avenue available to me. And as it happened, it turned out that I was a good technical lawyer. When I was reading those law reports and judgments, I could actually anticipate arguments before the judges got there. So something told me that I would be a great lawyer. I could be a fantastic barrister, except that problem of public speaking. Now, I didn't immediately address the problem until I was forced to do so. The occasion was this. It was the final year. I was 21 then. And a mock trial had been organized for the benefit of the incoming students. Would Dele Ogun volunteer to be an advocate in this mock trial? Hell no, he wasn't going to do that. I still had that fear and the terror, so I did not step forward. All the others who just spoke so effortlessly, they were there. Then the occasion came that I was asked to stand in for the tutor. The other students conspired and said, Dele is the best technical lawyer, let him stand in. It was fortunate, just fortunate, that I, prior to this occasion, had gone to the doctor and asked for help. I said to the doctor, doctor, I have a problem. In my mind, I'm a great speaker. I know what to say and I know how to say it, but I can't get the words out. Whenever I'm called upon to speak, I get the trembles and I get the shivers and I break into perspiration. And he had said, I know what you're suffering from. You're suffering from stage fright. Lots of great actors suffer from stage fright. I'm going to prescribe you some tablets. Anytime that you have to speak, just pop one of these and you'll be all right. Those tablets were lovely pink tablets, the color of Geo Siegel's jacket. Pop one of these and you'll be all right, is what he told me. Would I volunteer prior to this occasion that I'm talking to you about? So try the pills? No, I would not. But then I had no choice. The other students had partnered me with the responsibility of standing as the judge. Fortunately, the session was only due to start at 2 o'clock, and this was 1 o'clock. So I had enough time to run home, scramble through the drawer, looking for the pink beauties. I popped one of them and hoped that it would work. I only had 30 minutes left before the session was due to start. 2 o'clock came. Fortunately, the other advocates had to speak first. So I had the benefit of the opportunity of the delayed start for the magic to kick in. And then the moment came. It was my turn to speak. I felt no nerves. I felt complete calm. And then I spoke and I heard my voice for the very first time. I was flying. I was airborne. I could speak without nerves. And I could see the way the audience were looking at me, that somehow I was making an impact on this audience. That is when I cracked the problem of public speaking. Now, did I use the other 2 tablets? You bet I did, because that terror remained. And even beyond those 2 tablets, I now switched to something called Calm that I got from the Body Shop. It was a natural herbal substitute for the medicated pink tablets. And those helped me for a while. But then I realized that I wouldn't always have 1 hour interval before a speaking engagement, especially if I was going to be a barrister. I had to let go of the crutches. And the occasion came and I tried it. And believe it or not, although the nerves came initially, because I knew that I had swam the distance before, I knew that I would be okay. And since then, I've never had to depend on the tablets. But that was only the beginning of my speaking journey, because by virtue of conquering the nerves, all the thoughts that I've always had, I've always been a thinking person, but those thoughts were trapped inside my head because of that fear. Now they were released and they found expression in a strange way. And this is really what I want to share with the experienced speakers today, which is the journey and the crossover from the speaker to the writer, to the author. How did it start? There was a dining club in London. There are many fine dining clubs in England. And one of them was called the Academic Inn. It was run by a fantastic orator, the Reverend John Papworth. He could recite Shakespeare without notes in a manner that absolutely engaged and locked in your audience. This dining club, after the guest speaker would speak, they would be followed by a question and answer session. And because I always had these thoughts, now that I could give expression to them, somehow I made an impression on a publisher gentleman, Mr. John Coleman. John Coleman was an interesting character. He was a survivor of 3 strokes, severe strokes, but he was still hanging on in there. And he said to me, I will publish whatever you write. That's how a publishing opportunity landed in my lap. And my first published work came out in 2009. Ironically, it was 2009 that I started at Early Bird Speakers. I know that because I won Best Speaker with my icebreaker speech, which was all about these pink beauties that changed my life. And that certificate sits proudly in the last page of that first book of mine, my autobiography, The Law, the Lawyers and the Lawless. So I know that that's where the journey began. But what the Toastmasters experience now gave me, you know, all those speeches that we have to deliver, icebreaker, your body speaks, using visual aids, inspire your audience. I came to realize that all those skills that we use and practice to lock in our audience in those 5 to 7 minute speeches are the very skills that an author needs in order to lock in his or her audience for 200 to 300 to 400 pages. This is the experience that I would like to share with our fellow Toastmasters, that let us not stop at the point of delivering that speech of 7 to 8 to 9 minutes, that inside of us, inside of you all, lies the author to take it up to the next level. Now, I don't buy the theory that in every person there is a good book, but I strongly believe that in every good speaker, there is a good author. You only have to take it to the next level. Now, there's even a higher level that I want to share with you, which is beyond the actual writing of the book. It is the new world of the audiobook. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with that world, but this is the new frontier for public speakers, because what the audiobook reader wants is the author, ideally, to also read their book to them so that they can play it back at their leisure at any given time. Now, I recall when I produced my very first audiobook, it was a setup just like this. I was in a studio, just like the room that I'm in now. I could not see the audience, just as I can't see you now. And I had the headphones on my head, and all the disciplines that we use as Toastmasters, the voice projection, the vocal variety, the pace and tempo of our delivery, such that it mustn't be too fast, and yet it must not be too slow. These are all the disciplines that came to play as far as the audiobook production exercise was concerned. Now, we speak of a speech of 5 minutes, 7 minutes. What about an audiobook of 3 hours? In my case, it was actually 13 hours. How do you keep your audience locked in and engaged in your story for 13 whole hours? I have Toastmasters to thank for that experience and for the opportunity that I had to deliver that 13-hour production. All the practice, all the techniques, all the tricks of the trade came to the fore as far as that audiobook production exercise is concerned. So I say to you, fellow Toastmasters, friends and guests, that the journey towards being the ultimate speaker starts, certainly with me, it started first with facing my fears, that terror of public speaking that started with that young 7-year-old boy that was put on a plane at some date in November 1969, at a time when he could only speak his own Yoruba language, journeying out of that language into the strange English language. And beyond that, conquering the terror of public speaking. Now, I'll leave you with a note that you might find surprising. Do you know that this speaker failed the subject that nobody fails? You know what that subject is? Spoken English. I failed my spoken English GCSE exam. How did I do that? Well, as usual, I was just tossed in, wasn't I? No preparation. Before the pink beauties had come along, we were in almost like a bear pit of fellow students with a guest teacher. And they threw a topic in, canned laughter. Now, from a Nigerian household where I was only allowed to watch the 9 o'clock news and football, I knew nothing about canned laughter. And even if I did, I wasn't going to say a word. And I didn't say a word. And so, of course, the only grade that I could be given was an F. Failure. But failure does inspire. Failure does make everything possible, as is the slogan for this conference. So I'll leave you with those closing remarks. I hope they do inspire anyone who might have failed at anything and buy into the philosophy of Toastmasters, self-improvement, recognizing, as is the conference theme, everything is possible. I hand you back to our MC, Lydia McDowell.
Thank you so much, Dele, for that wonderful keynote speech where I'm sure we have all taken so much value from what you've said today. So I believe now we're going to open the floor for any questions that the audience has. So if you do have a question, please just raise your hand and we will unmute you so that you can ask your question to Dele live. So any questions, just raise your hand and we can unmute you. I will just have a look at the hands. I have one question from Romana. So Romana, if you're able to unmute yourself, please do. If not, our Zoom master. Okay, you're unmuted. Please go ahead, Romana. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Dele. Congratulations for such a lovely, inspiring speech. English is also not my first language, and I still have this hesitation. When I'm speaking, I can tell that I'm making grammatical error, but then again, I just try to correct it. What would be your advice for people whose first language is not English, and how can we get more confident in speaking in a second language?
Thank you, Romana. Yes, of course, because English is not our first language, we are still thinking in our home language. And at the same time, we're trying to speak as fast as the indigents. And that's where we get tripped up from time to time. I think in those circumstances, especially in the early stages of public speaking in England, don't be afraid to slow it up. You control the pace. And it's when you try to, it's a bit like riding a bike for the first time. You see how everybody does it and they can speed. And it's natural to think that when it comes to public speaking, we should be speaking as fast as everybody else. Like David Jones, who you hear later on, I always used to marvel at the speed at which he speaks. The word count is just remarkable. But I always recognize that English is not my first language, so I control the pace at which I speak. And in my club, Early Birds, I'm known as the pause master because I always use long pauses and transitions between everything that I want to say. I hope that helps.
The pause master, I love that. Okay, thank you so much, Romana. We now have a question from Abdallah. Abdallah, if you would like to unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. This is Abdallah speaking from Paris. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your story. I have a question about the accents. Well, I'm also a non-native English speaker, and sometimes I don't know which part of the word is the best to put the accent on and to transmit the idea, fully transmit the idea with the word I'm pronouncing.
Yes, I get that. I remember when I first came into the country, I arrived in a place called Highbury and Islington. At least I now know that it's Highbury and Islington. But because English was strange to me, I read it as Highbury and Islington. And so this is the challenge that we have when we're coming in from another language. But the important point is not so much what we say, if we're able to stress and perfect how we say it. I think how we say things is so much more important than what we say. The audience will always forgive you if you can engage them and you have a very strong, clear voice. So I wouldn't worry too much about the accent. I think that will come later on with experience. But the important thing is what you've already got, the clarity of expression and the voice projection. It's like music. Sometimes, you know, we don't understand a word that a particular artist sings in a foreign language, but it's the melody of the sound that really registers with our ears. So I think that would be my advice.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Abdallah. How we say things is so important, and especially for your audio narration, Dele, that must be equally as important to be able to put those accents in the right places.
Absolutely, and those of us who do have access to a foreign accent, that can be very useful when it comes to vocal variety.
Amazing, thank you so much. Are there any other questions? I think, Jill, is that your hand raised? Please do unmute yourself. We can't hear you, Jill, if you could unmute.
I thought I had. I just wanted to say, Dele, that I also studied law and read for the bar and was so terrified of public speaking that when we had to go to a big exercise where all the students had to go and there would be mock trials, suddenly I was pulled out of the crowd and told that the defendant in a road traffic accident, the person playing it was not there. and they made me do it. And I was so terrified of public speaking, I immediately admitted to having caused the accident so that the exercise couldn't go on and they had to think of something else to fill the time.
Brilliant story, brilliant story. I mean, you see, when I hear Jill and people hear me sometimes, they say, I can't believe that you struggled with public speaking. And this story about the pink beauties is something that I tell almost every week at Early Birds when visitors come to the club. And this is the beauty of Toastmasters, that it brings together those who have a special appreciation of the art of public speaking because they had some challenge or other along the way. The ones who are natural gifted speakers, they don't count, they take it for granted. But those of us who saw it as a challenge, we therefore also see it as an opportunity. And this is how we can get the best out of the experience, the whole journey.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jill, for your question. I think she's had to pop off for the next session, but thank you for that answer, Dele. Are there any other questions from the audience? Please raise your hand if you have a question. I'll just check the gallery. Okay, we have, I can see Alice and then I can see Paul afterwards. So Alice, if you would like to go first, please unmute yourself. Zoom Master, please could you unmute Alice for us? If not, Alice, okay, there you go. Please ask your question, Alice. I can't hear you, Alice. Dele, can you hear Alice?
No, I can't.
Okay, Alice, we can't hear you. So what we might do is just go to Paul first, and then we'll try and work out your audio, okay? So Paul, if you'd like to please answer your question. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Dele, thank you very much. I'm a podcaster and have been a podcaster since 2008, and I do a voluminous amount of voice work as an amateur. I wanted to ask you a very simple matter. Your book, your audio book, which I think you said was 31 hours. Which
13. 13.
Okay, 13. It's still a gargantuan feast of words, and I love the idea, and I must get to listen to it. My question is, how many hours did it take you to record it? And how did you also need to have the ability to notice when it wasn't quite right and go back and redo a paragraph or a piece, please?
Absolutely, Paul. The end product was 13 hours, but that was after, just like the actors, that was after takes and retakes. So if really aggregated all the stuff that was left on the cutting room floor, the whole session was probably nearer 40 hours or something like that. It got better as I went along. I had a technical director who was in the other room in the studio looking in through the glass, and whenever a word got caught such that my diction or expression of the use of the word was not clear, it would force me to take it back again. And if there were too many that were creeping in, it would again rewind, retake. So it's just like the movies. Producing the audiobook is the nearest thing to being in Hollywood. This is really what I wanted to share with the Toastmasters family, that we are that close to producing something magical in terms of the audiobooks.
And could I just add an addendum for a second, which is that we have the elective project within our education system, which is about creating a podcast. That is, I couldn't recommend that project too highly for somebody who wants to follow in your footsteps. Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you, Paul, for your question. I think someone is unmuted who needs to be muted. Manny or Zoom Master, please can you mute Thank you. Okay, thank you, Paul, for your question. We are now going to move on to Alice, if we can get sound working.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Alice. Welcome. Please ask your question.
Great, thanks very much. So my question, I think like some of the speakers, I'm also non-English, native English speaker. I think I also know that practice makes perfect, but sometimes like after a day's work, it's just very difficult to motivate myself to go to the Toastmaster event. So I am wondering, have you ever experienced those moments, when you don't really feel like in a mood to deliver a speech, and do you have any techniques to motivate yourself, and can you share it with us?
Yeah, well, I think these days they can't stop me talking since I found my voice. Even when they throw a ball at me at short notice and say, look, Dele, can you deliver a speech? Maybe it's the combination of the author and the speaker. The ideas and thoughts are always there. But yes, you're right. You can't always drag yourself to a formal Toastmasters meeting to get the practice opportunity. But what I did prior to becoming a Toastmaster, I did, once I found my voice, I became chairman of this organization and that organization. And that always gave you a speaking opportunity. These were community groups and within my profession, lawyers groups. And those are theatres for practice, similar to Toastmasters. Toastmasters gives you the extra in terms of the structured stage for delivering speeches and the tuition. But just like riding a bike, you could do it by yourself. You can go to a small group and just get the opportunity to take a position in an organization that will give you a chance to deliver a short speech. So that would be my advice.
Thank you, it's very helpful.
Thank you, Alice, for your question. So short speeches, that's the way to go. Okay, I think we have time for one more question, and we have, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Ratnakar. If you would like to turn your camera on so we can see you, and you're already on unmute.
Hello, can you see and hear me?
We can hear you, we can't see you. But okay. You can go ahead if you have issues with your video, that's fine.
Okay, shouldn't have, but it seems to be not. All right, Dele, thank you for that very moving speech. I wanted to ask you, talked about the pink tablets, but what about your Toastmaster journey? When did you start it? Did you do any contests? And how did you feel when you joined the Toastmasters first time? And how did you navigate your Toastmaster journey? Just briefly, if you can kindly explain. And you are an early bird speaker. That means your meetings are early in the morning. So how did you motivate yourself to get up early in the morning and attend the Toastmasters? And how long have you been a Toastmaster? Thank you, sir.
That's a great question, Ratnakar, because it reveals a lot about me. I'm not a natural early bird. I'm a late night worker. I'm an owl. I do most of my best work at night. I don't go to bed typically till about 2 in the morning. So how do I wake up for the last 13 years that I've been a member of Early Birds? It's because it's become a habit. It's become a drug in my system that I can't shake. I went for the first time under duress. I met somebody outside of Toastmasters, and he liked the way I spoke and said I should come. I said, I once had a problem with public speaking. I don't have it any longer. I had these pink beauties that sorted the problem out, but he was persistent. And then I went there, and you know what I saw? I saw table topics. I said, well, that is something different. Yes, I could do the prepared speeches. Yes, as an advocate in court, I could present the arguments. But what about that table topic experience when we're going to have a session of table topics after I finish speaking, as I understand, on the program. They just throw you a topic and you just got to run with it. That was a different challenge. That was a different experience. That is what ultimately drew me into Early Bird Speakers. And it was, you asked the question, have I entered contests? Yes, never successfully. I win in my club because I charm them and I'm popular there. But when it comes to inter-club competitions, I shy away from that. I go back to the shadows where I came from. That's, I hope I've answered your question, Ratnaka. If I've left any bit out, just do remind me.
No, thank you, Dele. Thank you for that. Would you consider entering contests now?
Do you think I'm good enough, Ratnaka?
Absolutely. I wonder why don't you compete?
I agree with Ratnaka 100%. I feel like you need to go and push that challenge and enter contests where you can go further than your club. That is all the time we actually have for the Q&As. So I'm sorry, Fiorella, we won't be able to take your question right now, but perhaps you can engage with Dele through the Hoover app. Okay, Dele, so over to you for your close.
Well, thank you very much, Lydia, for emceeing that session so expertly. Lovely, bright smile that you bring to the screen. This is the beauty of Zoom, really. We get up close and personal as if we're on TV. Fiorella is a member of my club, so she'll be able to tackle me in the course of the week. It's been a privilege to be on this undercard today, when you consider that boy who had a terror of public speaking and then who had to face up to the weakness. And now here he is today fronting this grand gathering of passionate speakers. I wasn't excited about the invitation originally until I was listening to the opening ceremony and I heard that the theme track, the soundtrack that was coming through, as it made me flash back to the horrors of that speech at secondary school before 1,400 boys. The nightmare of scoring an F grade in the spoken English examination. But this has made it all worthwhile. And once again, I give thanks to Toastmasters, but in particular, I want to thank that doctor who understood my problem and prescribed those pink beauties. Thank you, Toastmasters. Thank you, doctor. Thank you, everybody, for this.
Thank you so much, Dele, for the memorable keynote speech you have given us this evening. Thank you so much also for your time to answer the questions. And I feel like everybody who asked a question got a wonderful answer that will help them on their journey too. We're so grateful to you for being a part of this conference and giving us all this information. And I'm definitely going to take on board what you've said about maybe transitioning and doing something in terms of writing. It's definitely something that has inspired me. So thank you, Dele.